You made every decision yourself. Or so you thought. Every morning you wake up and choose what to wear, what to eat, what to feel, what to believe. You move through your day feeling like the author of your own story. But what if the story was already written and someone else held the pen? This is not about conspiracy. This is not about shadowy figures pulling strings in the dark. This is about something far more unsettling. It is happening in ordinary places, in your phone, in your relationships, in the language people use around you every day. And the reason most people never see it is because the best manipulation never feels like manipulation at all. Stay with this, because by the end, you will not look at your own mind the same way again. We live in an era that celebrates personal freedom. You are told you have options, endless choices, infinite paths, and yet research in behavioral psychology consistently shows that the more choices a person believes they have, the easier they are to guide, not by force, but by design. The feeling of freedom is often the most powerful cage ever built. Modern life has become an invisible influence. Social media platforms, advertising ecosystems, relationship dynamics, workplace hierarchies, all of them operate using the same hidden architecture. They do not tell you what to think. They shape the environment in which your thinking happens, and that is a very different thing. Think about the last time you scrolled through your phone late at night. You did not plan to spend an hour there. You just did. And when you finally put it down, it felt like your choice, like you simply lost track of time. But psychology suggests that what you experienced was not freedom. It was a carefully engineered sequence of micro-rewards, each one designed to delay the moment you would stop. The platform did not force you to stay. It never had to. It just made leaving feel slightly harder than continuing. This is called a variable reward loop, and it is the same psychological mechanism used in gambling. The uncertainty of what comes next, a notification, a post, a reaction, keeps the brain in a low-grade state of anticipation. And in that state, you are not thinking clearly. You are reacting. And people who are reacting are far easier to influence than people who are reflecting. But this is only the beginning. Manipulation in personal relationships is even harder to detect because it comes wrapped in something that feels like love, or loyalty, or care. Have you ever been around someone who has a way of making you feel slightly uncertain about yourself? Not through insults, not through obvious criticism, but through small, quiet moments. A pause that lasts a second too long after you speak. A subtle reframing of your accomplishment into something slightly less impressive. A way of asking questions that leaves you defending yourself without understanding why. In many cases, this behavior is not even fully conscious, but its effect is the same. It creates psychological dependency. When someone consistently makes you feel just a little off balance, you begin to seek their approval to feel stable again. And once that pattern is established, they do not need to control your actions. You will begin to control yourself on their behalf. This is the architecture of subtle dominance, and it operates in friendships, in families, in romantic relationships, in workplaces. Most people never notice this next part. Language is one of the most powerful and least understood tools of invisible influence. Not just what is said, but how it is framed. In psychology, this is known as the framing effect. The same information presented in two different ways can produce completely opposite emotional responses. Consider this. A news story that says 90% of people survive a procedure feels very different from one that says 10% do not survive it. The facts are identical, but the framing changes everything you feel about it. Now apply that to your daily life. The way a manager phrases feedback, the way a partner describes a conflict, the way a brand describes its product. Each of these is a quiet act of framing, and most of the time, you absorb the frame without ever questioning it. You respond to the version of reality you were given rather than the one that actually exists. Here is where it gets darker. There is a phenomenon in social psychology called social proof. It is the tendency to look at what others are doing in order to decide what you should do. On the surface, this sounds harmless, natural even. Human beings are social creatures. Of course, we look to each other for guidance. But consider how easily this instinct can be weaponized. When a product shows millions of five-star reviews, you feel safer buying it, even if you have no way to verify a single one. When an idea is repeated often enough in your environment, it begins to feel like common sense, even if it was a fringe belief just 5 years ago. When everyone around you seems to accept something, questioning it starts to feel less like independent thought and more like social risk. Manipulation does not always work by changing your mind. Sometimes it works simply by changing what you perceive everyone else's mind to be. Have you ever noticed how tired you feel at the end of a day when nothing particularly difficult happened? Psychology has a name for this: decision fatigue. Every choice you make throughout the day, no matter how small, draws from the same reservoir of cognitive energy. And as that energy depletes, your capacity for critical thinking weakens. You become more susceptible to default options, to shortcuts, to whatever feels easiest. This is not an accident in many designed environments. Supermarkets place impulse items near checkouts for a reason. Subscription services make cancellation deliberately complicated. Apps that want your attention push their most emotionally triggering content to the end of your scroll when your defenses are lowest. The architecture of your daily environment is often built around the most exhausted version of you, not the sharp, alert, well-rested version, the tired one, the one who just wants the friction to stop. What if this is happening to you right now? Not in some abstract, theoretical way, but today, in the conversations you had, in the content you consumed, in the decisions that felt so natural you barely registered making them. This is the deepest and most disturbing layer of invisible manipulation. It does not feel like control. It feels like life. It feels like you. And that is precisely what makes it so difficult to resist, because you cannot push back against something you do not believe is there. Research in cognitive behavioral science has consistently shown that awareness of a bias does not automatically neutralize it. Even people who study manipulation professionally can be manipulated. Even those who know exactly how variable reward loops work still feel the pull of the scroll. Knowledge alone is not armor, but it is the beginning of one. The darkest realization is not that others can control you. It is that the version of yourself you trust most, the inner voice that says, "I thought of this myself, I chose this freely, this is who I am," that voice is also shaped by every environment you have lived inside, by every relationship that left a mark, by every piece of content that passed through your eyes and ears and settled into the architecture of your beliefs. You are not a corrupted version of some pure original self. There is no version of any human that exists entirely outside of influence. But there is a version of you that can begin to see the architecture, that can pause in the moment between stimulus and response and ask, where did this impulse actually come from? That pause is not weakness. That pause is the only place genuine freedom actually lives. You cannot control everything that enters your mind, but you can control how long it stays. You can begin to notice the environments that leave you feeling diminished, anxious, or strangely dependent. You can start to question the frames you have been handed rather than simply inhabiting them. You can pay attention to how certain people, platforms, and systems make you feel, not in the moment but after, consistently, over time. Awareness is not a solution, but it is the only honest starting point. The manipulation that works best is the kind that makes you feel most like yourself. The influence that reaches deepest is the kind that never announces itself. And the most powerful thing you can do in a world designed to shape you without your consent is simply to notice. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And that is exactly where it begins.